27th, 2018. Good Monday morning to everyone out there. Thank you for joining me today. We had a little bit of glitch last week. A lot of holes, but we'll make it up for this week. I always say good morning on these greetings, but for Eastern Time, you're getting this in the afternoon already. Still morning for Central and Pacific. Time on Earth is an interesting concept. Last week, I received an interesting email from a group of high school business students of all places, Indonesia. Hello to all my friends and my listeners down there, young fellows, Indonesian young people. Last week we focused on finance. This week it'll be focused on business. We learn about the difference between nominal and intrinsic value of money. And I don't want this to be like a tutorial podcast. In our course of conversation, many of these concepts will just naturally flow. It will flow out from the train of thought that we are following. So I don't want it to be an academic 101 type, although there's going to some element that's going to sound like it, but that benefits a lot of our listeners, especially now that I met new friends there, business students, high school business anyways, in Indonesia. And I welcome all the young people, young high schools and college students all over the world who are in business and finance. Like I said, this is not an alternate to your schooling. You know, when you're having an interesting conversation with someone who is a serious type kind of person and some business concept, marketing and digital media concept just come up in the conversation naturally. Yeah, but why waste time? Let's make it worth our while. Welcome back, folks. This is a wonderful Monday morning. Well, Monday morning when I record the podcast. Eastern Time, you get this at noon. Pacific, our friends from Vancouver, BC, British Columbia area, you're getting this at 9 in the morning. And Central, Calgary, Alberta. I should be including the United States regions as well, because they also have the Eastern Time, Central Time, and Pacific time zones down there in the States as well. And we have a reach in the US as well for our Business and Finance Podcast Mondays. Thank you for sticking with me. And I apologize for glitches that happened last week. We have a lot of holes in our podcasting schedule. But that's the nature of the game for a one-man production crew. For now, that's our situation here at the Ordinary Joe Show podcast. I'm doing everything on my own. So if there's one aspect in the supply chain that get disrupted, the whole thing get disrupted. And that'll be an interesting concept that we are actually going to talk about today. We'll be talking about supply chain management. And before we continue on, any concepts, any business conversation that you hear from this show, time and again, we have to remind our listeners and our viewers that these are not equal to any academic pieces that you should. This is not an alternative to going to business school. These are not an alternative. It's an alternative, but it's not to replace any business advice from a professional business consultant. Everything that you hear from this show, similar to our finance shows, alternately we'll do that, finance and then business this week, finance next week, business again this week, finance, and then in the flow we'll also start we are going to integrate careers and also marketing, because digital marketing and digital media is what I went back to college for. learned so much interesting concepts about the subject matter. And a lot of people, they think they come into this field to find a job, but the nature of this particular discipline is, I don't see a lot of jobs for this kind of profession, but there's a lot of opportunity to start your own enterprise. You see, the traditional marketing is a behemoth. However, it's also a relic that's on the decline. Traditional marketing is still very, very strong. Mass media, the tri-media, television, radio, and print media are all still the gigantic sources of media, especially television nowadays, but it is on a steady decline. The alternative, digital media and digital marketing, so same as media and marketing when kind of interchange those two terms. Traditional marketing is on a steady decline, but is still the biggest. The new alternate, the new thing that's going to be the biggest trend is digital marketing. However, it's still a baby. Digital marketing is not stronger or not as strong as traditional marketing. Traditional marketing will stick around for a little bit longer. It will linger a little bit until everybody gets used to the new thing. But scripture says that you don't put new wine into old wineskin because it will burst. And that's how I see traditional marketing and digital marketing. The comparison between the two is that traditional marketing is like old wine and digital marketing is like the new wine. But many will say that the analogy of the older wine gets, the better it gets. It's always so true as well in this concept. Well, as you know, traditional marketing will not totally go away. A big part of digital marketing, a big part of the way it is modeled after traditional marketing, except it's modified so that it fits into the digital world that we live in, the data mining reality that we are all living in today's world. Every single move that we do now, every single person, especially if you live in a big city, every move that you take, every minute of the day, seems that you leave behind digital footprints, or what we call breadcrumbs. So in the future, when there's more analytics and there's more AI involved in our daily lives, all your movements and all your past and present digital footprints can be quantified to sort of predict what is your next move. So you have to be a little bit, you have to keep these things in mind. It's both not to fear, and yes, it has to be a subject of concern if you care about your human dignity and your privacy. Every Tuesdays on our podcast series, Tuesdays about future tech, and we touch on this topic a lot, about big data, about data mining, about our footprints that we leave on social media. And I'm on it every day as a podcaster. Every single day, every single moment of my life, I am leaving digital footprints behind that the AI can trace and understand what my behaviors are. But the good thing is it's semi-scripted. All this podcasting and vlogging that I do, it has to be, because I'm consumer-centric and it's not about me. And I guess that's one key to understand if you want to be involved in digital media and to be an influencer. Make sure that you follow the path of an influencer who is consumer-centric, viewer or listener-centric. That way you're not giving away who you are too much to the AI, so that the AI can predict your next move. Well, they can predict your next move according to how you program your digital persona. Looks like the big break is about to come here, and when we come back, we will definitely continue on with this conversation. Please don't go away. We'll be back in about 60 seconds. Please don't go away. We'll be right back after these short messages. Hello, a friendly reminder to all our followers and listeners on iTunes, Spreaker, and SoundCloud. Every Wednesday, if you like the topic of food, fine wines, and festivals, every Wednesday, 12 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Central, and 9 a.m. Pacific, we talk about everything about food, restaurants, new restaurant opening in Toronto, events, films about food, and all kind of stuff. So please check us out on Wednesdays on Wednesday podcast here at The Ordinary Joe Show. Welcome back to the show. Once in a while, I really have to catch myself because the way I think sometimes, I'm organically. My thoughts is like when you. It's like when you drop some kind of an organic material on a petri dish, and it branches out like many roots, many branching off. You know, it's very difficult to auditorily describe what I'm thinking, but I can see it in my mind's eye what I'm trying to say here. So bear with me. Anyways, the way I think, it branches off so many possible branches, and sometimes I start to open a statement as a follow-up on the previous statement, but it leads me to a different one. So I'm just kind of rewinded back on the previous segment before the break time. And what I was really important trying to say is that this show is not an alternative. It's not a replacement for going to don't miss your business classes, high school business class or college business class. Because we talk about business concepts here, and all the business concept that we share, same as the financial concept that we shared last week. I keep on saying everything that you hear here is, of my opinion, is not to be taken as a formal, academic, or professional advice for your own business. These are all just, we're just talking. We are having conversation. And in our course of conversation, because you are interested in business, you are interested in marketing and finance, and I am too, all the things that we learn along the way, it just come up as a part of our conversation. That's what this is all about. Yeah, so I've been listening to many other podcasts, and I've been learning a lot from them. But I take a podcast usually is a good starting point, an interesting starting point which will stimulate what you have in mind to like a guide, like a bullet point, like a series of bullet points that you want to think about to start researching on. So whatever we talk about here, it's up to you guys to be researching on. And I was talking about AI prediction of all the digital footprints that we leave behind in all our daily activities that involves our cell phones, our computers, and being on the internet every single day. And that's me. That's what I do every single day. I'm on the internet, designing campaigns for social media, for my clients and for myself, creating podcasts, creating videos, video production. I'm always leaving digital footprints behind. But the good thing is I am leaving footprints that are designed by me, scripted by me, because I am consumer centric. I'm designing things that are beneficial to my consumer and not to promote me as a celebrity. I mentioned this in my radio talk show interview as a keynote guest at Lunch Break Radio. I mentioned to my friends there at the station when we were having a conversation that I never had a desire to build a celebrity status for myself. Celebrity is not what drives me to do digital media. I don't want to be a celebrity. A lot of YouTubers, a lot of young millennials who wants to be in front of the camera, wants to create celebrity brand, which is on its own, not really that bad if they want to brand themselves as celebrities. But as for me, that is not my drive. My drive is to be an influencer, and I differentiate the two. A celebrity and an influencer is different, in my opinion. And the way it's different is that celebrities are focused on what it's a myopic marketing strategy, showing off who they are, what they can do. It's all about them. It's all about me. That's myopic marketing, and that's celebrity marketing. But the difference between that and an influencer marketing, I want to be an influencer. I don't want to be a celebrity. An influencer finds a voice, finds a message, and most of the time it's the message of the community that they represent. That's what an influencer is. And that's my own definition. Again, that's not an academic definition. I want to be an influencer, someone who represents the voice of a community and speak to their needs, be consumer-centric, be viewer and listener-centric here on the podcast. And that way, when AI tries to predict what I am going to do in the future, it's almost like I have programmed AI to predict the way I want it to predict me, because it's not me. The digital footprints I'm leaving behind here on the internet is not who I am, but who my consumers are, and I represent them, and I talk their voice, I speak their voice, I speak their message. And so that's how I kind of out in the open, I show who I am not. I am also who my listeners are, but that's not who all I am about. That's just a small part of me. So we have an F series of podcasting. So Mondays is the business, the entrepreneur, the finance aficionado that I am. That part of me, that's who I am in that part of me, but that's not entirely who I am. So AI can only see and hear and quantify what I leave behind, and it's semi-scripted what I leave behind. So that's the only thing that the AI can gather as a data on my behalf. And I'm kind of honing in to this, although this is not really what I want to talk about today. But this is very important. And on Tuesdays, we talk about future tech. And I would really encourage you, I'd like to urge you to come and tune in on Tuesdays on our Future Tech podcast, because this is what we talk about. We talk about big data, about digital footprints, your breadcrumbs, and how you are being profiled on the internet. As there are big data miners now. And it's in the guise of using all this data for marketing purposes, but it can also be used for other things. It can be used for political purposes, and I don't want to go down the rabbit hole with that today, because there's so many other things that we need to talk about. We're talking about supply chain. A supply chain is a system of organizations, people, activities, information, and resources involved in moving a product or service from supplier to customer. Supply chain activities involve the transformation of natural resources, raw materials, and components into a finished product that is delivered to the end customer. In sophisticated supply chain systems, used products may re-enter the supply chain at any point where residual value is recyclable. And that's Wikipedia supply chain definition. When it comes to business and finance, usually I like to go to Investopedia and not Wikipedia. Investopedia's take on breaking down supply chains. Business logistics management refers to the production and distribution process within the company, while supply chain management includes suppliers, manufacturers, and retailers that distribute the product to the end customer. Supply chains include every business that comes in contact with a particular product, including companies that assemble and deliver parts to the manufacturer. Now, that is the academic part. I have so many personal insights about supply chain management, the concept and the modeling of supply chain, and how it affects our daily lives. But just supply chain really makes sense, really makes a lot of sense. However, I think it's overblown in today's era, in the chapter of human history where we live right now. Supply chain has become so sophisticated that a lot of the cost involved and a lot of the runaround, and before we get the end product, before we get what we need to sustain our human lives, it goes through a supply chain. Just for the sake of letting it go through to a supply chain, it's a waste of time, waste of energy, waste of activity on Earth. And I don't know where to begin, but there's so much thoughts that I want to share with you when it comes to supply chain. And maybe we can step back, break it down, how it started, and well, I guess it naturally, organically, supply chain has been around. It's a creation of human activity. There's organic supply chain, and there's a manufactured supply chain, modeled supply chain, manufactured by an engineer. And I want to put a demarcation line just before we continue on. We'll say pre-industrial revolution supply chain and post-industrial revolution supply chain, where we are in right now. And where does... I don't believe this. I thought I'm just about to start here, and I can see the break time is about to loom. It's looming. It's about to come here on our timeline already. Keep in mind, folks, we only have this as a template for now. When we actually have sponsors and advertisers, this break time will be a little longer than the 60 seconds that we allot for our template here. And it's also going to be coming a lot more often so that we can sustain the operation of this podcast. But the alternate is to be listener support, and we'll talk about that when we come back. And I can see the music is about to start right now. Let's see. There it is. And okay, so please don't go away. We'll be back in about 60 seconds to continue on this podcast.
Please don't go away. We'll be right back after these short messages. Hello, a friendly reminder to all our followers and listeners on iTunes, Spreaker, and SoundCloud. Every Wednesday, if you like the topic of food, fine wines, and festivals, every Wednesday, 12 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Central, and 9 a.m. Pacific, we talk about everything about food, restaurants, new restaurant opening in Toronto, events, films about food, and all kind of stuff. So please check us out on Wednesdays on Wednesday podcast here at The Ordinary Joe Show.
Welcome back, friends, and I can see that this is the last segment for today's business podcast, and time flies. Half an hour is not enough for us to dig deep into the concepts that we want to talk about. So that is kind of a good segue to introduce that in the future what we are going to do, we'll have the subscription members site only to sustain the financial requirements of this operation. It's either we have advertisers or we have listeners and viewers supporting our show, and therefore we don't need to bring in so much advertising here anymore. But anyways, we're not worrying about that right now. Right now we're building our brand, we're creating brand equity for the show, and we're creating a community. That's most important. But going back to the topic before the break time, we're talking about supply chain management and how it got complicated. I was talking about the demarcation line we want to define here for specific for our show: a pre-industrial revolution supply chain and post-industrial revolution supply chain. Supply chain is a natural phenomenon in business. It's a human activity. It's a product of human activity. The way we trade, the way we exchange things with other people, products and services, so that it's cooperation. So I have a farm of potatoes, you have a farm of pineapples. Once in a while I want to have pineapples on my dinner table. So let's have a barter between you and me. But now, maybe I'm going to travel 10 kilometers away. I'm talking about pre-industrial revolution now. Supply chain. Maybe I can get a little bit more of your pineapple, because I know next town, 3 towns from here, I want to go and trade some of my potatoes for, let's say, some of their rice. But I know they also like pineapple, so I'm gonna get some more of your pineapple, neighbor farmer. So I'll bring with me both potatoes and pineapples to trade to 3 towns down the road for their rice. But I know they like pineapples. They like my potatoes as well. So I am going, as I go town to town to town, I'll be gathering all the products that they have in between towns before my final town destination. So I don't only have my own product, I don't only have my own farm potatoes to bring to offer as a trade. I have the products of my neighboring farmers as well. So I maybe in my cart I have pineapples, I have water, I have salt, whatnot. I have all kinds of products, and I go to the next town and I want some of their products over there. Let's barter. And look, I got diversity of products in my cart here. Get what you want, and I need a bunch of your supplies. So that is an organic, simplified supply chain that can, and you know, it could be also like from town to town. You just pass it along, pass it down the conveyor through, you know, buggies and horse and buggies back in the day. So supply chain and managing the supply chain management is a natural product of human activity, of human interaction, doing business, trading with each other. So there's nothing wrong with supply chain on its own, but the modified, sophisticated supply chain of what's taking care of what our needs nowadays in modern day societies, modern day cities. Some of them are just going through a supply chain for the sake of going through a supply chain, which is unnecessary, inefficient, and a waste of energy, in my opinion. Again, everything that you hear here on the podcast is all an opinion, not to be taken academic, and not to be taken as a professional advice, both here in business concept and the financial concept that we shared. Now, let me give you an example of what I am thinking about. This is one very good example of what I think modern day products that has to go through a supply chain unnecessarily can actually increase the cost instead of decreasing the cost and cause so much delays. I'll give you 2 examples today. So the first one, there was a documentary, 10-minute film documentary about a certain toilet. Here in Canada, we call them washrooms. I think so. In the Philippines, they call it CR, comfort rooms. In the United States, they probably call it washrooms or toilets, public facilities. In the States, there was this public facility in a park, and the size of this, male washroom and female washroom in one small building, maybe the size of 30 by 30. Let's say 40 by 40, 20 by 20 for the men's washroom and 20 by 20 for the women's washroom. Cost that city $2 million to build. A very small, a very tiny toilet, washroom facility, public facility in a park in the States, in one of the states. Can't remember what it is now. I seen this many months ago. I just remember the details that Stottsdale, one of the social media influencer and documentary host, featured this on his show. It costs tiny little washroom $2 million. And when he went to investigate and find out from the officials of that city why did such small washroom or toilet cost the city $2 million, the officials of that town, the project manager, actually justified the cost by saying that through the official channels that the project management, the conceptualizing, it has to go through a lot of red tape, pretty much. And the official was saying that because it has to go through, and it's necessary for it to go through health inspection and blah blah blah, go through suppliers, go through planning, go through that it ran up the cost for that tiny small washroom $2 million, and it's actually good for their city. It's actually good for business. And the official was saying that it has to go through necessary supply chain, and according to the legislation of their city, how facilities and public works should function in their particular city. So it ran up the cost to $2 million, where in any other place such facility could probably be built under $100,000. See the exponential cost that it ran up to, from under $100,000 worth of build that ran up to $2 million for the sake of going through a supply chain. Oh, I wish we have more time. It looks like I only have 5 more minutes here to talk before the episode is over. But I give you another example, and next week we will talk about supply chain management, part 2 on this podcast. In the school, public school where my daughter goes to, we built a playground that cost all the parents, the volunteer. It's all by donation by parents. It cost the neighborhood who put their money together to build this tiny playground $1 million. $1 million for a playground. It's unbelievable. But if all things equal, and we let's say we build this playground in pre-industrial revolution model of supply chain, but everything else is equal, like inflation of today and the value of money today, it will probably be done very, very quickly by someone in the community who's expert in building playgrounds. It would have cost us under $100,000 to build such a tiny playground. It wouldn't cost us the $1 million and all the delays, and it took a year, more than a year, for them to build a playground. But when we come back next week, please tune in again. We will talk about supply chain management and the concept of supply chain and the history of it, only here at the It's Just Another Ordinary Joe Show Business and Finance Podcast Mondays. God bless you all. See you next week.